And welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. I'm Trip Mitchell, joined as always by Randall Carlisle, formerly of Channel 4 News.
For a long, long time.
And how many other stations were you anchor on? So you've got Dallas, you've got, how many markets?
I've got Minneapolis, Dallas, Colorado Springs, Dayton, Salt Lake twice. So I was at KUTV in Salt Lake back in 1980.
Because I remember your former co-anchor Terry Wood.
Yes.
Who, I just read about him this morning. Ironically, by the way, if you're turning on this show, this isn't Old Times with Old Anchors. This is a show about addiction and recovery and the many wonderful people in the Salt Lake metropolitan area who are there to help people with recovery.
Right.
But Terry is now the spokesman for the athletic.
The DABC. Yes.
Alcoholic beverage.
Yes. We're still friends, even though I don't drink anymore, so.
And
he doesn't get a discount on booze, so, you know.
Well, it is funny how you guys have gone to other sides.
Oh, yeah. I go to Odyssey House and he goes to the DABC.
I would say that you both have done well.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But our show is on addiction, and during the course, we've had how many weeks now? This is probably, we're getting close, well above 20 shows.
Yeah, we are. 26
shows, yeah. Lee, and just for those watching, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Randall is as well. Lee, our producer, we just found out has had 44 years of sobriety.
Wow.
And that's
why the camera's not shaking, right? Yeah.
Yes, this is steady cam.
Yeah, I've got 7 and you've got
3 this time.
And Emily, our guest, has
18 months.
18 months. Emily is a star graduate of our Adolescent program. And I admire people. I love going to our Adolescent program. We were talking about this beforehand. If you and I would have thought about sobriety at Emily's age, 18, what would have happened to the rest of our lives? You know.
And that's a question that's scary to ask, but.
And she's got her whole life in front of her, and she's done just great things at our Adolescent program, which is a residential program, and it's a tough program. But
that's for sure.
You see,
yep,
she
that's
won't.
For sure.
She won't
yeah, as a matter of fact, Randall showed Lee and I around about a year ago now. Well, maybe not a year ago. We got a chance to go down to the facility, and it is kind of a scary spot to be into. And I bet when you first walked through the doors, that was kind of your thought as well.
Yeah, it was pretty intimidating. I had never been in like a inpatient facility before, so walking in and like seeing all the kids and the staff and trying to learn all the rules was.
What did you think at first when you walked in? You self-admitted, right?
Yes. Yeah. So after I was expelled from my high school, my mom turned to me and she's like, well, either you find a rehab or we find a rehab. And so I just wanted that last little bit of control, and I was like, you know what, I'll find a rehab. So, so I had heard about Odyssey House through a friend. Like a friend of a friend of a friend had gone to rehab, and I mean, it was the only one that I knew of. And so it was the first
So it
thing
was definitely number one on your list.
Yeah, right. And so that was the first thing that Odyssey was the first treatment center that I looked up and did some research on, and I was just intrigued even by looking at the website. I looked at some other ones, not very great. I don't even remember the names of them, but
one of them is called the Not So Great Rehab Center.
Yeah. I do remember that one.
Okay,
yeah, for sure.
She wisely picked Odyssey over that one.
So then I came in for a tour, and one of the residents, who I'm still in contact with, she gave me a tour along with Rachel Santizo, who is a graduate of one of the adult programs. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one, but one of the adult programs. And so I remember sitting in the director's office, Tammy Clark. I was sitting in her office, and everyone was just kind of looking at me like, what do you think? And I remember thinking, like, well, if I think too much about it, I'm not going to want to go in at all. But I know I need it. So let's do it.
So I'm going to do the math. You're 18 now.
Mm-hmm.
18 months ago, you were 16, thereabouts, and you had the maturity at the age of 16 to realize that you had to make a tremendous change. I've been around 16-year-olds. That's not many 16-year-olds strong suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of my whole life I've been mature in some ways, but like that, like thinking rationally in times that I need to. But then I also started, using alcohol when I was like 14 and being ridiculously immature about my decisions. So it's kind of a,
She's a highly intelligent person, and her parents are both very intelligent. So we're talking about a family
Randall,
with a lot of thought goes into it. I know her parents as well.
One of the interesting things in doing this show with 26 episodes is we've met a lot of people in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the common themes is that virtually to a person, these are all potentially really high achieving people.
Sure.
And it also, we're on this show, we're going to try to emphasize, but it's kind of amazing that to a person, they all can do amazing
except
things.
for you and me. We're not very high achievers, but she's going to be a great
We've set
high
the bar
achiever.
at such a level, you're going to come across this show looking like a rocket scientist.
Just for our listeners and viewers, can you just describe what you went through that got you to the point that you needed to seek a treatment program?
Yeah. Well, I can either do the long version of just like what I think started it when I was like a child, or just kind of like what I was using. It's kind of up to you guys. And
I'd be interested to hear what you thought happened at a young age that encouraged you to start drinking at 14.
So when I was very young, I lost my dad to colon cancer. And even though I don't necessarily remember, like, I don't
How old
have,
were you when he passed?
I was super young, like 2 or 3 months.
Oh,
And so I don't really remember him and have memories of him being sick and stuff like that. But for the first year and a half of my life, it was just me and my mom. And I'm a very strong believer in kind of like the subconscious versus conscious mind. And even if your conscious mind doesn't really realize something is happening, it doesn't mean that it's not affecting you in a very long-term kind of way. And so one of the reasons that I started drinking was because I was so angry. I was angry because I tried to push people away, because I didn't want people to get close, because I didn't want to lose them. And so there's no way to know for sure, but I personally think that it's my subconscious knows that I suffered a great loss, and so did my mom. And just being with her in that time really affected me.
But one of the interesting things, probably you were an amazing joy to your father in the few months he had before he passed away, knowing that he had fathered a girl and that, probably an amazing thing for someone who was just a couple months to live.
And one of the things we and that's one of the reasons the Odyssey program works is because they try to drill down into stuff like that, and that would be called trauma of some form. You don't have to be molested or beaten for you to have suffered some trauma, and almost everybody in our program has suffered some kind of trauma. Mm-hmm. And so, did you figure this out at Odyssey, or?
Yeah, I kind of had some base work just from something that my mom told me. I had like a stealing phase before I started using.
Hang on to your wallet.
Yeah, that's right. I need the extra cash.
Keyword is face.
Yeah. So eventually I got caught, and I remember when she confronted me about it, and I remember that really, really well. And that's kind of something that she told me is she thinks that not only affected her, but it also affected me. And that's where the anger came from. It wasn't really that we put together that losing people went to anger, went to pushing people away, and like, you know, all of that. But she was the first one to make that connection. And I'm really thankful, really, really thankful for my mom. She has helped me a lot. And the man that she married to, who's now my dad, he's not my stepdad. He's not Mike, he's Dad. And they've just supported me through all of this and through all my ridiculously poor decisions. But
Can you
they're still
describe
there.
some of those poor decisions that got you booted out of school and into Odyssey?
For sure. So, okay, let's see. So, I was super angry kid, like getting into fights and whatnot. I remember in 3rd grade, me and these 2 kids would go out and like wrestle. But it's really just me beating the hell out of them.
And they would go all the time?
Yeah, I mean, they were 2 guys, and they were like,
Hey,
oh,
let's go out and
it's
get
no
beat
big
up.
deal. Like, they were like, yeah, I mean, yeah, one is now, you know, one of the best wrestlers in the nation. He's going to Princeton.
You were a good trainer.
Oh, apparently.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But, you know, they thought like, oh, well, it's a girl, and we can beat a girl for sure. But in 3rd grade, it's not so much. I mean, they would whoop me now. But hopefully, we're not going to find that out. Right? Anyway, and always fighting with my brother and, you know, stuff like that. But I guess not we, my parents always thought that it was a phase and I would grow out of it. And so when I was 14, I started drinking casually, just kind of out of curiosity. Because my parents casually drink, they have friends over and they all casually drink, like they have a glass of wine with dinner and stuff like that. And I had this kind of back to the maturity thing, is that I really wanted to be mature and I really wanted to be an adult. And that's also been kind of a theme through my life. Like when I was like 7, I wanted to drive to school. 'Cause I wanted to do it by myself. Which I'm really glad I didn't. Yes, that probably wouldn't have ended
As
very
in
well.
your parents' insurance company as well.
Yeah, right? Anyway, so when I was 14, started drinking out of like curiosity and just fell in love with it immediately. It just kind of...
Was it the taste? Was it the...
Definitely not the taste.
The feeling.
Yeah, it was the feeling of being drunk and having the... I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but me being able to control when I'm out of control. Me getting to make that decision saying, I'm going to drink this much, so I get drunk. I mean, it's kind of an interesting concept, and it probably makes a lot more sense in my head than it does coming out of my mouth, but anyway, so I started drinking and smoking marijuana and using nicotine.
Did you have any challenges finding all of the above?
No.
And
None.
for people watching, the perception is that it's hard to find alcohol and drugs in this town, and one thing I've learned from the show is not the case at all.
No.
How would you find it?
Stealing from my parents, having my friends steal from their parents, older siblings.
It's out there.
Yeah, there's definitely ways.
You want it, you can get it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways.
Okay. So as a 14-year-old, you have access to virtually anything.
Right. And so those are really...
That's scary, by the way.
Yes.
And cocaine is expensive. How does a high school kid get cocaine?
Well, so I continue to drink and continue to use nicotine and marijuana and alcohol. Those were kind of my 3. And I justified that by saying, well, everyone experiments with those 3, so it's not any different. Maybe doing a little earlier, but I just thought that meant I was mature and I was becoming an adult. And so then, let's see,
You started
junior year.
cocaine? Is that when you started working as a server?
Yes, well, so I worked at a bus, worked as a busser, at a restaurant downtown. It's like a sit-down burger place, and I was, using those three, kind of experimenting with other stuff like MDMA and LSD and mushrooms and stuff like that. Just pretty much anything I could find. Xanax, Tramadol, and it was really just whatever someone offered. I was like, oh yeah, I want that for sure. So anyway, I was looking over one of the server's shoulders when she was texting, and I saw her send a text that was like, yeah, I have a gram, that'll be $60, I'll meet you, wherever. And so, being familiar with that lingo, I asked her, I was like, so, what do you deal? Looking back on it, that wasn't the best idea.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I am really lucky that she was like, oh, she's just a kid, she doesn't know. That you don't ask a dealer about that kind of stuff.
You typically don't.
Yeah, so I I am really lucky that she was so...
You would have been an amazing undercover officer for the Salt Lake Police
Yeah.
Department. That would have been.
So, really thankful that she had mercy on me for sure, and her boyfriend. But anyway, she told me that she mainly sold cocaine, and I remember thinking like, well, alcohol doesn't really do much for me anymore, and weed is okay, but it smells and it's it's like comparatively big, I guess. Takes up a lot of room, and so it just wasn't practical in my mind. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Like, I'll be able to stay awake in class. I'll be like extra productive. Like, this is great. The only downside is it's illegal and I could get addicted, but that's no big deal.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
As a 16-year-old, I was like, yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds
this is
great.
case in point why we typically don't let 16-year-olds vote.
Right.
Though maybe they would do
Yeah.
a better job. Who knows?
Yeah, so I went home after my shift and used, and I was like, wow, this is great. And that's what I used my paychecks on. And then when that money ran out, I was using, at the height of my using, I was spending about $400 a week on substance.
A teenager, $400 a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
So obviously my part-time high school job paying me $6 an hour, which is technically not illegal because I got tips, but I didn't make a lot of money at all. I needed to make more. I didn't want to steal money from my family because I was like, oh, well, that's too far. Why I drew the line there, I'm not really sure. It was December of my junior year, so I don't know, what was that, 2017. And I was on the basketball team. And I was the manager. So I didn't play, but I still got to go to all the games, and I got all the gear, and it was a lot of fun. And so I was kind of someone that people would come to, and so I was friends with most of the girls on the team. Anyway, we went to Manila for a tournament, and it was an overnight tournament, and I couldn't go a day without alcohol or cocaine, and so I was like, well, it's fine, I'll just bring it with me. A lot of the girls, like junior and senior girls, also asked me if I could bring them alcohol, and so basically that one night, I don't remember much of it, but everybody was totally trashed. And we were like, okay, just don't let any underclassmen in, because we said they're going to snitch on us, which now I'm really glad that they did, but that's what we called it. They're going to snitch on us, don't let them in. But there came a point in the night where we were being so loud and we were so disoriented that one of the freshmen came to knock on the door and we just let him in. And I don't remember this, but apparently did, like an 8-inch line, like right in front of her.
How'd that work out?
That not so well. And anyway, so we drank it all, and I finished my bag and whatever. So we were on our way home, and someone was like, I think we let one of the freshmen into our room last night. And I was like, oh God, like, no, it's probably fine. It's probably fine. They're not gonna snitch on us because we're the big kids, and you don't want to seem uncool to like the big kids on the basketball team, especially at such a small school. And I was just telling myself it was totally fine. The next day, getting an email from my coach, I was like, we heard these rumors and just listed all of the stuff that we did, and
Ooh.
we need, these 5 girls to come in, and this was over winter break. And so I that kind of oh crap moment. And so what did I do? I drank for the whole winter break. I was drunk for 22 days. And at the time, I was really proud of it. Like, counting every day, like, Snapchatting all my friends, like, woo, day 17. Not so great. Anyway, I come back the first day, come back to school, they bring me into the principal's office, they suspend me, and I totally denied everything. But because I was such an angry teenager, they were like, well, we can't have you at school because if you figure out who told us, we're scared for their safety. So you can't come on property until we figure this out. Eventually, I came clean with what I had done, and I got expelled. Then that's when my mom told me, you pick a rehab or we'll pick a rehab. And so that's what happened to get me there. A good and a bad story, I guess.
No.
And what's really cool is where she's going now. Maybe you can.
Yeah.
So fast forward 18 months,
Okay.
and what's your life like now?
I moved out of my parents' house. I really, really worked hard, both in Odyssey, in my treatment, but also in my education, and so they let me back in.
Hey, fantastic.
Yeah, it was good, and so I guess I was like one of the first people that they've let back in after being expelled, and I'm not really sure, but that's something my mom is really proud of.
So you would go from Odyssey House up to Roland Hall for classes?
So I did, so January of 2018 I got expelled, and I went into Odyssey. I was inpatient there until August, and then I took classes at the community college for that fall. Oh no, let's see. Yeah, for that fall semester. And then in the spring, they let me back in to do the last semester and kind of finish up.
And so you graduated with your class?
I did. Yeah.
Wow. What a difference.
And now you're going to.
Now I'm going to the University of Utah. Starting in the fall, I'm doing biomedical engineering.
That's what Randall and I both started.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
This is where you ended up?
Yeah,
I
it
told
didn't go
I
well.
told you she's no dummy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't go well for us.
So that's my major, but then I want to go into med school and practice addiction medicine, hopefully in the research and development aspect of things. I just got a full-time job down at Gateway doing security, which is really interesting because I've kind of one of the Gateway's biggest problems is it's right across from the homeless shelter, and so there's a lot of homeless individuals and a lot of illicit drug use on property, and basically our job is to just keep it off property. We don't arrest people, we don't call the cops. If they're overdosed, we take care of them and call an ambulance. That's pretty much it. Other than that, we escort them off the property. So it's really interesting to kind of be on both sides of that. And even though I wasn't in the shelter and homeless and in the same socioeconomic class as these people, the thought processes are very similar. And so now being on the other side of it, it's a lot easier for me to recognize and have empathy
Oh,
for these people, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do security at Gateway. So yeah, and I live alone, and
well, you were
yeah.
amazingly independent, and this half hour has flown.
Yeah, it has.
Your story, I mean,
Isn't
this
she
is amazing.
incredible? I mean, you know, Odyssey's very proud of her. Her parents are very proud. She's gone through a lot of crap, and she's done well. You know, and she's really intelligent. And, I mean, I don't mean to pump you up, but I'm impressed by her.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
and the other thing is, you know that as things go forward, that life is not easy, but you've gone through some amazingly tough times.
Yeah, it's been rough for sure. But I put myself in all of those positions, and I know that I can now kind of get out of what I hope is going to be the worst. I hope I've already kind of passed that barrier in my life.
You have.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'm really confident in the skills that Odyssey has taught me, that I can get through the rest of my life semi-easily. And obviously there's going to be ups and downs, but I feel prepared.
You know, when you buy a car, you get an owner's manual.
Mm-hmm.
When you get born, we don't get an owner's manual for our brain. And one of the things that maybe I've learned the hard way is that there are some situations we get in, and having someone to talk to is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Because there are some people out there, and we talked about at the beginning of the show, there are people out here that are trying to help you and
Sure.
myself and Lee, and there are people that care.
Yeah.
And once you make that phone call, once you start getting information, and there are rehabs all over. Randall's lucky enough to, after Channel 4, he had an opportunity to stay on with 4 for many more years, but had a chance to go work for Odyssey, and it's been the most rewarding period of your life.
It just feels so good working for an agency that does good things. I mean, we don't succeed with everyone. I'm sure she's seen people walk out, they leave a lot, but the ones who do succeed, and you see a story like this, it's like, right on, I get to work at a place that works with people like Emilie and changes lives. You know.
If someone's got a question, what's a great number to call?
Great. I'm glad you asked me that, Trip. The number is 801-322-3222.
And for those of watching on TV, Lee will put it right at the bottom of the screen, and that's a number at Odyssey House. And call and talk to someone. They've got some really smart, great people who answer the phones, and there's rehabs all over the country.
Right.
They're inpatient, outpatient. There's so many resources available to those of us in the state of Utah. Take advantage of one.
Sure.
And that phone call would be great, whether it's you, a child, a spouse, friend. That sort of call is super important.
Yep.
And what a great story. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. And I just want to say that if the Adolescent program is something that viewers or listeners are interested in, and they have any questions for me, I am absolutely open to that.
We'll put your email at the bottom of the screen.
Yep, that works.
And what is
That
your
works.
email for our listeners on iTunes?
So it's just my first and last name, Emilie Orphanakis, but that's kind of difficult. So I'll spell it out.
How do you spell your Orphanakis?
Orfankis.
Close.
Orphanakis. Go ahead.
So
screwed up.
my first name's a little different too. So it's Emilie.
Okay.
Last name is Orfanakis @gmail.com.
Okay.
So,
Well,
yeah.
Emilie, thank you so much. This was a delight. Randall, as usual.
We could even arrange, if you have some kids you want to, that you're interested in or think you might be interested in, we could arrange for Emilie to give you, she doesn't work for Odyssey, but to give you a tour of our place.
Yeah.
Oh, that would
Absolutely.
be wonderful.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
Yeah, boy, what a fast-paced half hour. Thank
Yeah.
you as always. Emilie, thank you
you.
so much.
Yeah, of course.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.